plan, but the House progressives say that's not enough. The House will reconvene at noon. Speaker Pelosi saying again there will be a vote on infrastructure. There was no government shutdown when midnight arrived in Washington.
Congress approved a short-term spending bill extending government funding into early December. It avoids triggering a government shutdown, setting aside one deadline, but the measure won bipartisan support in both the House and Senate only after Democrats scrapped a debt limit provision that would have suspended the borrowing cap. The Treasury Secretary says lawmakers must address the debt ceiling by October 18th.
Fox's Jared Halprin in Washington. A ruling from a federal appeals court on vaccine mandates for healthcare workers in New York State. The court says private employers cannot be forced to fire workers who claim a religious exemption to the vaccine mandate. The country's most populous state has put police reform on the books.
California enacting a law to strip the badges of police officers who act criminally or with bias. California was one of just 4 states without such a system, alongside Hawaii, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. The state's new sweeping police reforms were driven in part by last year's killing of George Floyd at the hands of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin.
Fox's Matt Finn. Wall Street ends September down sharply, the Dow losing 546 points, NASDAQ down 64. America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
A new government study finds there's been a dramatic drop in the percentage of teens who are vaping.
Down about 40% this year compared to last year in a national survey of high school students conducted online for the first time. The results suggest school closures and less social time for vaping could be a factor. 11% of high schoolers and less than 3% of middle school students reported recent use of vape products. It's the second annual drop after federal crackdowns aimed at curbing underage use of e-cigarettes, including an FDA ban on flavors and an increase in the age to buy vape and tobacco products from 18 to 21. One CDC specialist says the report still shows a serious public health concern with more than 2 million adolescents vaping. Lisa Brady, Fox News.
A federal judge Friday will hold hearings into a lawsuit filed by the Justice Department seeking to overturn the new Texas law that prohibits abortion after the detection of a fetal heartbeat. It's life in prison for the man who opened fire at a San Diego synagogue in 2019.
When 22-year-old John Ernest opened fire inside the Chabad synagogue in Poway, he killed 60-year-old Lori Gilbert Kay and wounded an 8-year-old girl, her uncle, and the rabbi. At sentencing, multiple people gave victim impact statements, including Lori's husband, Dr. Howard Kay, who said he and his daughter still ache with loneliness at Lori's loss.
She reached a mission in her life despite being cut off in the grace of God by doing acts of kindness to the very end.
Ernest called 911 himself after the shooting and told the dispatcher he was defending the country against the Jewish people whom he claimed were trying to destroy white people. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Las Vegas preparing to remember a number of ceremonies planned to mark the day 4 years ago Friday that a sniper opened fire on an outdoor music festival from a nearby high-rise hotel, killing at least 58 people. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Great news, Guam! Chili's 2 for Dining is back. Enjoy a full-on meal deal made for 2 for just $35. Start with 2 Coca-Cola beverages, an appetizer to share, and 2 mouth-watering entrees like the sizzling personal fajitas, the mouth-watering honey chipotle steak and shrimp, or Chili's world-famous fall-off-the-bone baby back ribs. Available for a limited time. Dine in today or call 648-7377 to place to-go orders. Chili's is located on the 2nd floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's. Savor the moment.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumon. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. Good afternoon and welcome to Tall Tales for Friday, the 1st of October, first day of the new fiscal year. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie this afternoon. I'll be here until 6 o'clock this evening. I'll be here until Bob gets back from off island. Thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon, whether you're on 93.3 or you're watching us on Facebook Live. Yay. We made it. We made it out of the fiscal year. Now, if we could just make it through 2021 without besting our records from 2020. We are in an interesting time of life. And so we're here this afternoon to discuss that interesting time of life and also to take your calls and find out what's interesting in your life, where it intersects with the rest of our lives. 888-8255 is the telephone number here at the studio. Looking forward to your calls. Over the past, I've been here, a week? And I've been hearing from a bunch of the regulars, but I'd like to actually hear from a few of you who have been listening and you're just kind of shy. But if you don't want to just talk, maybe just stay on long enough to let us know what's on your mind and invite me to address it here on Tall Tales. In the meantime, while we're waiting for that all-important call from you, we'll go ahead and address the editorials that we find today in the 2 leading daily newspapers on Zami Ikatni. And we have a couple of editorials today. One is from the PDN. Mitigate. Adelup needs a plan to address chronic flooding areas on Guam. And in the Guam Daily Post, a very large editorial that is entitled Relief for Power Customers Could Arrive Months from Now Thanks to Solar Energy. And it only takes 9 minutes to come from the sun, but we're still waiting. That's okay. We can do that. Let's go ahead with the PDN first, since I mentioned it first. And that is, Mitigate. Adelup needs a plan to address chronic flooding areas on Guam. And because I've got time here, but also I think if you haven't read it, you should hear it. And if you have read it, perhaps you'd like for me to read it to you so that it sinks in a little differently. Good news for Tumon and the island's visitor industry, which is still in the early stages of recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Guam Visitors Bureau will receive nearly $14 million in federal infrastructure grants to repair and improve Matapang Beach Park. Carl Gutierrez, GVB president and CEO, first announced the project in March, stating funding could come from Guam's share of American Rescue Plan funds. GVB president Jerry, I am talking about, this is the editorial, yes, chronic flooding areas. GVB president Jerry Perez, Vice President Jerry Perez, at a meeting of the government's Recovery Task Force on Wednesday, said the money, a total of $13.86 million, will come from federal infrastructure grants through the Governor's Bureau of Statistics and Plans. So is this infrastructure or is it rescue plan? Anyway, the primary purpose is to repair a broken stormwater collection system under the park's main lawn, which is part of a larger system including storm drains, a ponding basin, and underground culverts to prevent flooding in the tourist district. The first construction phase, which could go out to bid in January, would address the stormwater infiltration field and pavilions at a cost of about $8.9 million. The tourism agency also wants to improve the public park, I don't know, it says public park time, but I think that's a typo. Again, typo. Improve the public park, improve the public parking, adding a new fire station, relocating pavilions, and building retail space for vendors. This will improve the experience of visitors in Tumon, not just by making the park more attractive, but also by mitigating flooding problems in the area. It's great that the project will help address Tumon flooding, but what about the rest of the problem areas on Guam? Tropical storm Mindula passed Guam last week without any significant winds felt, but it did bring a lot of rain. So much so that it made Route 1 at Polaris Point and Petey impassable for hours. It's an area that's had chronic flooding problems for years. Where are the plans to mitigate the problem? The road was built with federal funds. Has GovGuam tried to tap the Federal Highway Administration for help? Are there any plans to use federal infrastructure funds to address flooding there or in other areas? Adelup needs to answer these questions and formulate a plan for areas that flood chronically. Let's see. So, by the column inches in this, about 70% of the length of this article is all about Matapang Beach Park and about the wonderful things that are going to happen there at the tune of $14 million. And I don't have any problem with the need to address Matapang Beach Park and the flooding in Tumon. Although when we did have the recent rains, we didn't have flooding in Tumon. We had flooding in Petey. And yes, I think we should be improving our public parks, not just for the tourists, because the tourists are not there. We're there. We, the residents, are there. And yes, that area is a recharge zone, the place where the sand is sort of built up in there. And that area was really supposed to be part of the recharge zone for the Park Hotel. But that was back in the 1980s. I guess we don't have to worry about that agreement anymore. And it is a little bit higher than the parking lot that is attached to the Fiesta Hotel. And it might be that it would be actually better if the government of Guam were to ask for an easement to improve to put capacity in the parking lot at the former Fiesta Hotel. But no, that's not really in the cards. We have a public property there, and they really want to spend money on that park. But if you've seen the pictures, it's a building. It's like a building like GVB. And it's going to have, there's an associated story for this. I think it was in yesterday's paper. There's going to be a building. There's going to be space for vendors because there are no businesses close by in Tumon for the people who go to that park. I can understand the fire station, for Tumon rescue, just like the Koban there. It's necessary to have official buildings available to protect the public. And of course, we all know how well used that Koban is. But I can't help but think back. And some of you may be old enough to think back with me to when San Vittoris Road was first developed and all the effort we went through to take out, to condemn pieces of land alongside to align the roadway and to get it down, up high enough, down far enough to align to all the properties and to take care of the flooding, which had been a problem even when it was just a sand track. And so they put in a ponding basin behind what is now the main police station down in Tumon. They put a ponding basin behind so the water would recharge there. And we found that that's not enough. Not because the ponding basin's too small, but because sand and other stuff on the roads filled up the pipes leading to it because there was no maintenance. Matapang Beach Park is under the same kind of designation as a recharge zone. And it's really like the parking lot. And that was made by Park Hotel because they didn't have enough land. And so they adopted the park. And they put the recharge zone in there where the parking lot is. But in that hump of land where all the canoes are parked, that land hasn't been dug out. It is full of archaeologically important remains. And I wonder if $13.86 million is going to cover it. And if there isn't something more that we could do with that, like have an open, active archaeological dig. I'd like to know whether the folks who are hair on fire about finding and preserving archaeological information found inside the fences will be as vigilant and active and interested in a project that happens on GovGuam land. And consider that park area will be completely walled off. They'll be out there with big excavators. I remember when they dug that sand out in 85, 86. They dug the sand out from where that parking lot is that we currently use. And where did they take all that extra sand? They took it to Adelup because the Adelup field was too low and it could not be usable for anything. A parade ground, a soccer field, mass gatherings, nothing. Unless it was raised about, a foot. I worked there. I don't know how many truckloads of sand came, but they came and 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 they came. And it was spread out and it was crowned. I'm talking about Adelup. And it was crowned so that the water on the surface, when the grass would grow, would tend to run off. Otherwise, it would soak in. And the legislature, under now GVB president, chairman of the board, CEO, all hats, Carl Gutierrez, passed a law of sorts that prohibited Governor Bordallo from spending any money on Adelup, any public employee time. And so what did the governor do? At 5 o'clock, he changed into his denim and grabbed a rake and went out there and spread that sand out flat himself. And as he was doing it, it was very somber pastime. Because as he was raking it out, he was separating out the rocks and the bones and the pottery. Lots of it. I used to have to go down from my office with papers for him to sign that we needed to get out, that had already been cleared by all the other signatures have been, and clearances have been obtained. Last step was to get the governor's signature. He wasn't in his chambers. He was down in the field. And I had the distinct pleasure of being able to take that folder down and ask him to sign, and he would ask me what each thing was, and I would tell him. Just the stuff from my office, from my particular area of all the executive direction activities. And he was in a very serious personal bubble as he was working. And he would take a break, and his mood would lighten. We would say what we had to say to each other to get the checks signed, and the papers signed, the letters signed, and I would take the papers back up, and he would continue to rake until sundown, until dark. But I am sitting here telling you that unless anything that goes beyond the footprint of Matapang Beach development in 1986 is going to strike bones, is going to dig up the heritage of pre-Spanish Guam. And I sure hope they've got that penciled in their tizzy to do development and put some concession stands on government land down there so that we could, generate some revenue for these, ailing agencies that don't have enough money. What's the justification for putting concession stands on government land in a hyper commercial zone? I just don't see it. Unless these are concession stands for rafts to go out to the ocean, or, guided tours, snorkeling tours. It could be something like that. But these are actually activities that should be hosted right out of those private sector buildings all up and down Tumonde. That is what they're for. That's what business people are investing in. Ideas to develop tourism plant. And that's about Matapang. That's 70% of my discussion, but let's talk about the rest of the problem areas on Guam. In Pidi, you go back to your history books, and you'll find out that the road between Umatic and Agana didn't run through Pidi. That was not an all-weather trail. It was okay during dry season. Otherwise, you took a boat from Sumay to the Pidi docks, which are there where now the Harbor of Refuge is, and also behind the power plant area there at the road, the intersection to Cabras Island.
Well, you can still take a boat. You just have to have a very small keel.
You can still take a boat, but you have to have landing rights on the Navy inside the fence.
I'm talking on that road when it floods. I've seen people kayak on.
Oh, sure. And you might get caught in the current. Because the problem is not the road. The problem is, and if anybody who's gone through that flooding, of course, anyone who's been here any length of time has. Everyone, if you're paying attention, you will see that the problem is that the water that falls on the road cannot get into the wetlands because there's something of a berm. And the berm is either maintained by grass that's simply cut and cut and cut until it mats down and rebuilds the berm, or it is blocked by branches that were cut and they sort of flow with the water until they form a log jam, and we don't have beavers here to either build them or to chew them apart. We don't have any human beavers at the Department of Public Works to go out there and clear it. They have apparently no agreements with adjoining landowners to build water courses, and they don't seem to understand that it's their job. It's not Adeloop's job. The only thing Adeloop has to really do is kick the Director of Public Works in the rump when that happens. Now, in all fairness, on the way in today, as I was driving down Marine Drive, just about a half hour ago, in front of JFK, there was a private crew out there. One supervisor and about 4 guys with flat shovels. And they were cutting the grass out of the drainage course that's between the curb and the slow lane. And there's not a lot of it there. But consider, take that effort and multiply it by every mile of roadway on Guam. And think of the places where you see chronic flooding because there's no place for the water to go to get off the road. Or when it flows down to a grate that's been covered over by vegetation and cut grass and stuff that's fallen out of trucks and trash, and nobody comes along to clean it. Or not enough cleaning has been done to keep so that all the water falls into that grate. It just keeps flowing another further on down the road. And is there maintenance of the underground courses, the drainage channels underneath our roads? Is there maintenance of the ditches? Or is there maintenance of the shoulders? Along Route 15, back road to Anderson, there are areas that when we had that big rain from the typhoon just passed by, there's a tropical depression dumping enough water at midnight as I'm driving up Route 15, where the water was several inches deep on the road because the grass on the immediately adjacent to the traveled portion of the road had risen up so high from just being cut or being neglected that the water was ponding on the road. It's not an all-weather road if the water ponds on the road. And these roads are supposed to be all-weather roads because they're built for defense purposes. They link the bases. They provide access between the bases and for the people on base to get outside the base to do their business and for people who are off the base to get on the base to do their business. Federal justification for the roads. Gov Guam, Department of Public Works, right here across the street from the studios, I know somewhere it's written, which is called a clause concerning maintenance of effort. We give you all this money to build, rebuild, resurface, whatever highways, and then you maintain the effort. If somebody from the community comes along and smashes the guardrail down, you'll replace it. You see already. But we're ignoring that. The headline again is Adeloop needs a plan to address chronic flooding areas on Guam. I want to make the point in conclusion That it's not Adelup that needs to make a plan. It's the rest of us need to make a plan. We need a plan to drive on roads that are flooding, and we need to make a plan to make sure that we don't forget about this flooding in the next election. Jose, let's take a break.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
You know all those amazing photos and videos saved on your camera roll capturing your love for Guam? We want to see it. Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram to submit your best moments for a chance to win weekly prizes. The Guam Visitors Bureau will choose a weekly winner, so share your love for our island paradise now and win. Brought to you by GVB. Thank you for making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
And thank you very much. Before we go to the phones and find out just what you guys out there are thinking about, let me just tell you about a few things happening on Facebook Live. Jose reminds me that The Point has been nominated for Best Radio Station of PICA's Best of Guam 2021. Yes, register and vote for your most awesome talk radio station on Guam. That's for you guys to do.
And we were the only talk radio station nominated, so that's pretty cool.
Well,
that's a badge of honor.
Are there any more that may be nominated or no?
Just us. And a few other stations as well. I think the nominations were put out.
Not that you have to tell me who they are, but you know.
I don't know. They weren't nominated.
Okay. Well, you know, we aim to please. And we think that we're doing the best job of any talk radio station on the island. And so we would really appreciate if our listeners would vote for us. As has been said a number of times, vote early and vote often. And Sandra has already voted for us today. Thank you very much. Hey there, Jesse. Senator Lujan is watching us here on Facebook Live. And Colin says, for the people first. And Colin's asking, where's the background music? Yeah, the music for my story. Right? We have a problem here with The Point. And that is that we don't pay royalties for music. If we did, I might have a music show here. But, you know, we can't do that. So, no, we have to kind of be sparing. I'll have to sing.
Do you remember the original song, theme song for Tall Tales was?
Was it My Way?
Take 5.
Oh, no, Take 5. Mm-hmm. You know, but the thing is that Take 5 is basically, you know, take a break. We don't take breaks around here. And we do have to take breaks to remind you of the good folks who are with us in our endeavors and what might be happening out in the community that you need to know about, that businesses have available for you for goods and services. But we don't take 5. We don't. And I was always wondering about that. I didn't want to talk to Bob about that quite so seriously, but I did provide to him the lyrics to Take 5, because there are lyrics. Oh, yeah, Carmen McRae sang them, and I've got a copy of that. So I listened to it, transcribed it, and sent up. It was the definitive version. It's like 1960 Carmen McRae live at Basin Street East. And I would know about this. Let's see. Sume Road. Andre Bainham says, beautiful story about Bordalio. You know, we all have these stories in our heritage. Why are we waiting until we're gone to tell them? I just, you know, really, we have to start sharing these stories. Donna Mila says, Adelup needs to make a plan to build our economy. If you've ever seen the budget for Adelup, we were talking last week about the executive security budget. No, but just the Adelup budget for people who assist the governor in handling the executive branch of the government of Guam, leading and directing. It's called executive direction budget. It's to cover all of the various areas of responsibility of the governor of Guam. Community affairs, health, education, federal affairs, federal relations, general governmental relations, such as the relationship between the governor and the legislature, submitting legislative agenda for the term, and coordinating testimonies, and the like. That's where the money goes. Also, besides that, she has agencies, entire agencies that are charged with various aspects, and so there are directors, boards, and career. I don't want to call them bureaucrats, but career professionals who are in these jobs in the agencies because we need these jobs done. And all that information is available to the governor to make decisions and then to implement. It's the executive branch. And Colin continues, we're on a tropical island. It's always going to have overgrowth. Yes. And we live on a tropical island. We shouldn't behave like we're living in the desert and not expect it to grow, like not have a plan, not know how fast it grows. We all know how fast our own yards grow. Why can't we collectively know how fast the roadsides get overgrown? I have noticed over the past week, which is odd for a rainy season, but over the past week, I noticed that the mayor of Jotnia, the mayor of Talafofo, and the mayor of Jigo all have equipment out on the DPW's roadsides, because in the past, the mayors were not supposed to maintain the numbered routes, the roadsides of the numbered routes. That's supposed to be DPW. Now they're doing that. I am curious. How can they do that?
Isn't that an overlap of services?
It's not, because actually the mayors, even though they're elected, going back several hundred years, the village mayors are really an extension of the governor. The alcalde were the people in the villages to bring the dictates of the directives of the governor to the village, to recruit labor from the village to carry out public works such as road maintenance and stuff like that in their own areas, and to report back to the governor on what the people in the villages were thinking. Are they going to have an uprising? Are they, disgruntled? Do they have competing leaders? All this kind of thing.
So is that their role these days?
Well, it's always been the role. Because DPW is something like Navy Public Works Center. But in order for the governor, whether it's governor of Guam, elected, governor of Guam appointed, naval governor, Spanish governor, that chief executive needs to have somebody in the village who's going around and knows his village.
So those are the mayors.
Those are the mayors.
So they get their orders from Adelup.
They have to. They get their orders from if they don't live in fear of Adelup not giving them DPW support, they live in fear of not getting releases of the monies that the legislature gives them, or getting saddled with a whole bunch of things to do, and other people just don't show up from the agencies. It is an extension of the office of the governor, but some years ago, in the villages, we were empowered to elect them.
Yeah, so that seems more like there are representatives and not the governor's representatives, right?
But formally, on paper, and practically, they are.
I'd like to revisit that. That's an interesting discussion.
It is. It's an interesting
Because they
relationship.
also have like some sort of a legislative body too that they meet as a legislative group.
Well, they have the Mayor's Council of Guam, and they discuss matters in common, and they testify on bills as a group. And so, yes, they know what's going on in the villages. Perhaps more so than our 20, well, we don't have 21 anymore because they're senators. And the senators, are island-wide. And they are like governors, but they're just 15 of them. And they have to have 8 to agree, and that kind of thing. Yes, we'll get back to that. But first, now, let's go to the phones. Another Joe, welcome back to Tall Tales.
Hey there.
Did I take you by surprise?
How's it going? So we're talking about nostalgia for Governor Bradallo. And I remember as a kid, by the time I was starting to drive, or right before, by the time I was starting to drive, we'd be going around in around Agana, especially in West O'Brien, East West O'Brien. And we have an idea who our leaders are, who the governor is. And we were driving on the road there, passing the Laddystone Park. It used to be called, now it's Angel Santos Park. And a little bit further down around that area, right, we see the governor working on the hillside, pruning plants and trees and whatever. I'm like, isn't that the governor? What's he doing? So he likes to do that. He likes to work around outside. So that's one of my memories.
Yeah. Lots of people remember that. Not just the trees that are around Government House, but also the manzanita trees that he planted in Agana. Over the objections of the members of the legislature, and those trees eventually were all cut down after various typhoons.
Yeah, well, I got a story about that too. I was working, I know it was a summer program for the commissioner at the time, Commissioner Ngata.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the guys go out and do work out in the roads, right, bush cutting and stuff. And on occasion, the guys would be fed up with these trees because they make a huge mess, all along again, all along O'Brien Drive especially. There'd be these fruit flies all over the place because of, it's constantly providing fruit and falling in this. So there's fruit flies all over the place, and these, little by little, they would spread, and the trees would multiply, and it seemed like every opportunity the guys were going to cut some down here and cut some down there, but yeah, they were all over the place. About Adelaide, you said they got that backfill sand from was it Matapang Beach?
Yeah, it's not really backfill. It was a top coat. It was the sand that from the recharge zone under the parking lot, and the construction footprint for the Park Hotel.
So I remember I don't know if it was the same beach, but there's a story of there was remains found. And they made a big deal about, we got to bury these remains back in this area. And I thought to myself, in this day and age, and the time it was the late 80s or early 90s, like, it's so ridiculous. They should study those bones, put them in a museum somewhere.
Oh, they have.
Have a memorial.
They have.
A respectful memorial.
They have. Actually, the bones were excavated using archaeologically sound procedures. And perhaps not studying well enough the surroundings of the bones. The bones were recovered, but because of the construction timing, they had to do it pretty quickly.
We should have tourism based on archaeological digs. that'll be one way to make money, bring new revenue. There's bound to be a bunch of Japanese, Koreans, say, yeah, I want to, like Indiana Jones theme, like, yeah, let's study these, even over in Gettysburg, right? They have a museum where, I don't know if it's still there, but you can see the actual battlefield, right, that they built over it. I don't know, did you ever go to the Gettysburg battlefield museum?
No, I haven't been to Gettysburg, but I've been to a number of other locations where...
We should have that in Guam, Daryl. You're a genius, man. We should have archaeological site-based tourism, because that's what they do over there in Gettysburg, in I forget, is that Virginia or is that Washington, Virginia?
No, it's in southern Pennsylvania, just north of D.C. And okay. No, I'm not a genius.
My bad.
I'm not a genius. I'm not a genius. I just have seen these things, and these are not original ideas. These are things that have worked in places like Athens and Rome and Cairo, Egypt, and like Stonehenge. And this is not rocket scientist. It's tourism destination development, and we just don't seem to be able to get out of first gear.
Do it, Daryl. Get him out of first gear. Anyway, thanks for your time. I'll keep listening. Okay?
Thank you very much, Joe, for your call this afternoon. You see...
Vote for Daryl.
Well, vote for this station as Pika's best of 2021. Actually, I was a part of a best of, not by name. I was just part of it. But when I first started in radio 40 years ago, 40 years and about 4 months ago, the station I was with as a volunteer was voted as the best radio station in Baltimore. And it was all volunteer, and it was only 12 watts of power. And the antenna was on top of about a 3-story dorm building in the middle of the city. Up on a high ground overlooking the city. And it was the best station in Baltimore. And that's where I got started, doing Tuesday and Friday mornings from 6 till 9. Not talking, just playing music. But we've got our Carl with us right now. Hey there, Carl. How are you doing? Thanks for calling in this afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Daryl. I got nothing political or COVID related this afternoon. I just wanted to. I just wanted to express my gratitude to the Point staff. You guys have given me, literally probably hundreds of hours of, in the background as I'm doing things, just entertainment and education, and I don't know what to say. I've already voted, and I will vote every day, for you guys. I'm still a fan. I was a fan when I first discovered you all a few years ago, and I'm still a fanboy today.
Well, we thank you very much, because we remember that you were an early adopter of this station as your leading source for the discussions that we all have to have about what's going on in our community. And
I have
we
to
rely on
say a compliment to you, Daryl. I know you've even openly admitted it, and I already knew it, that you lean left, but you do a good job for filling in for Bob, who is about as to the right conservative as he can possibly imagine.
Oh, I can imagine worse.
I never sensed you really. Well, I never really sensed you push your view, which I know is somewhat different. But you've done a good job standing in for Bob, and you're stepping into some. You'll have to admit some pretty huge shoes. Bob
yeah, I say that openly.
So much historical knowledge and knowledge of politics on Guam and nationally, and you've done a good job. So
thank you.
My hat's off to you. Hat tip to Daryl.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carl.
And Jose, and even the Tall Tales Truth Posse, the listeners. I learn things when people call in, when they comment on Facebook. So it's like a little community, you know, and it's I really enjoy it, and I feel a little kinship with people out there, even people who call in and, you know, don't agree. You know, I learned something. So it's I just wanted to give you guys, everybody, hat tip to the whole Tall Tales and The Point community.
Thank you very much, Carl. We really appreciate that.
All right. Well, I'll vote every day, and you guys always have my vote. In my book, you're by far the best talk radio show in Guam.
Hear that? Did we get that? Did we get the recording of that? Great. Okay. Thank you, Carl, very much for your call this afternoon. Okay. Bye-bye. It's time to take a break here, and we'll come back on the other side with more Tall Tales.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars, like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage, as low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore, as low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Hey, all right, my turn again. Take a look through the newspaper, and I just realized that I haven't even gotten around to the other half of Zami Ikatni. Not that we can't just go ahead and enjoy our meal as we go along. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, and I don't mind taking a break for the compliments, but we have a little known fact. None of you see this. There's this monitor up in the corner, and this it's like a spear gun, right? And it kind of constantly tracks me. And if I lean too far to the left, that'll be it. I'll be harpooned. So, right? See, it just missed me. I have to be careful in this job. Here I am, you know. Taking a risk, but you know, I can do this. I can take a risk because I'm already retired, and you know, I've given as much as I can. I've given for a lifetime, and if my time is over, that's it. But I'm here to kind of help the rest of us along, help the rest of you along, so that we can do what needs to be done in real time and not wait for the. There's no reason to wait for the next set of elected officials to get things done, or the next set of the next owners of the newspapers, or the next editors, or the next set of reporters. There is no reason to have to wait for higher quality in our community. Our expectations are too low. I just pulled this thing out. Where is it? It was a picture of flooding at Benevente Middle School. And it's a picture that accompanies, it's a September 24 picture, rain-soaked walkway at Benevente Middle School in Dedido. And it's about no more useless walkways on school campuses. You know, it's one thing to put a walkway up and to cover it with a canopy. It's another thing entirely for it to be effective. You know, there's form and there's function. And why we think that the day's work is done when we've only met the requirements of form is a kind of thinking that we really should be teaching our children not to accept. in public school. This is a value, a civic value that we should be imparting. This is not something that is a cultural value. It's a civic value. How do you simply say that because I've checked all the boxes that I have done a good job? And maybe the guy who wrote the boxes, didn't know well enough how to set up those boxes. But do you understand what's going on? Or did you just check out the boxes and by randomness, it happens to be 100%? We do have another part of Zami Ikatne, and that is from the Guam Daily Post. Relief for power customers could arrive months from now thanks to solar energy. There's not time enough to do this before the top of the hour, so we'll wait a bit on this. But just think about this over the next 10 minutes or so while we, as we go towards the top of the hour, 5 o'clock, and we'll have a bunch of folks joining us who get off at 5 o'clock and can get in their cars and turn on the radio. We have the Fox News at 5 and some stirring halftime show music for those who are taking a break from the first hour and just getting in the cars and in time to catch our second hour and drive home with us. That relief for those of us who use power could arrive months from now thanks to solar energy. And I'll read this to you because I guarantee it's going to sound like an infomercial. It's not going to sound like critical thinking. It's not going to tell you what happened with the mud and stormwater runoff down at Marbo. Did they get big vacuum trucks down there and hoses and filters and suck the water out of the Marble Cave and filter it and flush off the rocks and with the filtered water and keep filtering it until it ran clean and pristine and beautiful blue? Or is it still typical Zigu red dirt, rust color red dirt stained? I can't really tell because they got the whole place fenced off. But solar power is coming, and your bills will go down. Doesn't matter how high the TEPCO Ray was talking about this morning. The price of fuel is up above $80 a barrel wholesale on the world markets, in at least one of the markets. And that's what dictates how much it is for gas here. How much it is to that the utility has to charge for the lights and for turning on your oven and your water heater. Because we're so dependent on appliances and lifestyle that is built on $12 per kilowatt power and $2.20 a gallon gasoline. But here on Guam, doesn't matter if it's 28 cents a kilowatt hour or 32 cents a kilowatt hour and $5 a gallon of gas, we will maintain that lifestyle. And we can afford it. Except those of us who can't. It's just about 5 o'clock, and I will take myself a break. I suggest you do so too and come back and join me again for the second hour of Tall Tales this afternoon in a brand new fiscal year. Tall Tales on the point. It's 5 o'clock.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They'll try again today. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, to pass an infrastructure bill in the House of Representatives after failing to vote in a late-night session Thursday.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi again calling off a vote on a bipartisan infrastructure bill after Democrats were unable to come to an immediate agreement. While the White House says they are closer to an agreement than ever before, they are calling for more time. Still, Pelosi insists there will be a vote Friday.
Fox's Sean Lanchel in Washington. Progressive Democrats in the House say they won't vote for the infrastructure bill until the Senate passes a much larger social spending plan. But moderate West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin says he'll not support the $3.5 trillion plan. He's drawn a red line at less than half that amount.
I'm willing to sit down and work through that 1.5 to get our priorities, and they can come back and do later, and they can run on the rest of it later. I think there's many ways to get to where they want to.
There will not be a government shutdown, at least for another 2 months.
On this vote, the yeas are 65, the nays are 35. The 60-vote threshold having been achieved, the bill is passed.
The Senate voting to extend the government's spending authorization. The House then passed it as well, and President Biden signed the bill that lets the government spend money until December the 2nd. There is not an agreement yet on hiking or suspending the country's debt ceiling, which Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says will reach sometime in the next couple of weeks. The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits rose for a third straight week, sign the Delta variant of the coronavirus may be slowing the job market's recovery. The Labor Department says claims were up by 11,000 last week to 362,000. The Commerce Department says the U.S. economy expanded at a 6.7% annual pace from April through June, slightly upgrading its estimate of last quarter's growth. But it was another tough day on Wall Street. The Dow losing 546 points Thursday. NASDAQ down 64. The S&P 500 52 points lower. America is listening to Fox News.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars. Like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage, as low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore, as low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Kulay na kaibigan at handa para sa inyo. Ang bangko ng kinabukasan, laging maaasahan. And Pacific, where others put branches, we place
roots.com.
Several days of congressional hearings with the country's military leaders have ended about the end of the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan.
Just one of the stunning admissions from this week's hearings. Signs of collapse began in June, yet the White House did not halt the withdrawal. Documents obtained by Reuters show the Afghan central bank depleted its U.S. dollar reserves in the months before the Taliban took Kabul. Corruption was documented for more than a decade by the Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction in quarterly reports required by Congress. Defense officials testified no one anticipated the fall of Kabul in 11 days, but they had intelligence suggesting the Afghan government would fall by Thanksgiving.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin. Special Counsel John Durham has issued more subpoenas in his investigation of the genesis of the FBI's Russia probe during the 2016 presidential campaign.
The announcement of this subpoena comes just a couple of weeks after a former Clinton campaign attorney from 2016 was indicted by Special Counsel Durham for lying to the FBI. Fox News can confirm that this subpoena specifically involves a man named Rodney Jaffe, according to a source with knowledge of the investigation. Our sources tell us that Jaffe's name appears in the indictment of Michael Sussman. Sussman is the former Perkins Coie attorney who the special counsel says brought information to the FBI about an alleged server the Trump campaign used to communicate with the Kremlin through a Russian bank, information that just did not pan out.
Fox's David Spunt reports Rodney Jaffe's attorney disputes the allegations. An anthropologist and the Iowa State Medical Examiner are trying to identify human remains found in a cornfield Thursday not far from Montezuma, Iowa. From the clothing found at the scene, they believe it could be the body of 10-year-old Xavier Harrelson, who disappeared May 27th. Tropical storm warnings are up for Bermuda as Hurricane Sam passes to the east of the island. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Contact Express Financial for all your financial needs. Express Financial is consumer lending at its very best. They also have a host of dealer service programs with quick approvals. There are 3 ways to apply. Over the phone at 637-9834. You may visit their office in person at 600 Harmon Loop Road across the street from Costules. Or you can also visit their webpage and apply at myexpressfinancial.com. In most cases, you'll get your money the same day.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Absolutely. Welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who's off island. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon to find out what's going on here and around in the community. It's Friday, so again, we'll go heading into a weekend where all kinds of things will happen, and we'll talk about them again on Monday. But right now, we've only got what's happening today. And we have to resolve to do some things that whatever we can, even if it's just to understand them better and figure a way forward together for all of us. Because we're not talking about family affairs. We're not talking about personal finances. We're not talking about religious beliefs, competing religious beliefs. We're talking about matters in the public sphere. We're talking about understanding our world. We're talking about how do we process information and make the best life we can. That's what we're doing here at Tall Tales. We're talking about what's going on and how to make today better, tomorrow better for all of us, not individually, severally, exclusively, but all of us together, where we all come together to do what has to be done, to elect our leaders, to have a government that's effective, to greet each other in public spaces in a manner that's civil, respectful, and allows everyone the best experience. And how do we address our common problems? Effectively, efficiently, And again, with respect for each other. Because we have the common tools. And we have what's called the media. The medium in between us. It's like the highway. We all use. And we use talk radio in that manner. Now, before the break, I was telling you about the other half of Jami Ikatni from the Guam Daily Post today. The editorial relief for power customers could arrive months from now thanks to solar energy. And I sort of tipped you off that as I read this to you, you're going to understand just how much of an infomercial it is. And it's okay because it's Public Power Week. And that's also an editorial that was written, it's a letter that was written and published today in the PDN from John Beneventi. And it's his job. But when you read the letter, you realize that it's what they do. He explains what the good people at Guam Power Authority do. And they do. And that's why you can just go to your switch and turn it on as long as you pay. But instead of reading the other half of Jami Ikatni and waxing poetic about it, I want to understand our world better. I want to hear from you. And I have one of you standing by right now. And he's ready. I know. He always is ready. Right, Frenchie?
Correct, Daryl, correct.
Now,
listening to you right now, I mean, talking about basically a Shangri-La of society.
Shangri-La?
A Shangri-La of society, yeah. It sounded like you read Father Ezel's column this morning in the Post.
Oh, I just read it. I read it during the break. I'm a speed reader.
During the Kumbaya?
Yeah, Kumbaya. Oh, is that a request? You want me to read his column? He does have it. It's right here. Let's all sing Kumbaya. Did you want me to do that? Is that a request from you?
No.
No?
You know,
how can you do that?
I was raised by the Jesuits, so I know how they work.
So you've already heard the sermon?
Oh, I've heard it many times.
Well, you know, I was trying to figure out.
It's the old joke about the Jesuit and the journalist, right?
Oh, what is that? Can you share that?
The journalists say, I heard you Jesuit always answer a question by another question. And the Jesuit looks puzzled and says, and may I know who told you that?
You know, I went to a Jesuit university, and I knew well enough how close to be and how far away to be.
Yeah. But, you know, so absolutely. So you and I are recovering Jesuit education children.
Oh, I don't know if I've recovered yet. But I do have to watch out for something. I do have to watch out for something because engaging you in this conversation and sharing it through this facility at this time, I have to watch out because you may get me while you're talking. You may get me to lean so far over to the left that harpoon comes down, and then
no, don't worry. Actually, what I wanted to talk about is going to take you back right to the center. I wanted to talk about the Second Amendment, which we start each show with.
Yes.
And I was watching and looking at some of the statistics from last year from the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, be careful for what you wish for. Because last year, if you remember, before the election, we had those riots everywhere in the nations and
in Dededo?
being burned down and everything. And one of the side effects of this is that there has been over 3 million new gun owners during that period until the beginning of the year, and it's mostly female suburban persons that have bought a gun for the first times, and apparently they've become quite radicalized. And it's quite interesting that, you know, when you talk with gun control people, they always take the example of Australia. Look at what Australia did. It can be done in the United States. And then when you see what's happening right now in Australia, you say, no, sir, thank you very much. It's not. I prefer to be in the U.S. I think the answer to gun confiscation is gun proliferation. And
because it's worked so well in the U.S. I mean, actually, our experiment has gone on long enough to draw some conclusions.
Well, yeah. Actually, until last year, the crimes were at the lowest point in the United States history. And that's with most states having concealed carry laws and everything. So it's very interesting. But that was kind of a interesting fact to see that sometime when you push for social upheavals and everything, you end up with a big pushback from people who usually keep silent. And it looks like a lot of women from the suburban areas have voted with their feet and went to their nearest gun store and became new gun owners. Very interesting. That is interesting. You know, it kind of takes me back to something that maybe a lot of us consider to be cliche, but I remember watching the cowboy movies. And what's the first thing that happened when a town in Texas or Arizona or New Mexico what was the first sign of the town being civilized and under the rule of law? And that was that the sheriff required anybody coming in from outside of town to leave their sidearms at the sheriff's office. Watch out for that harpoon. You missed. But I just, this is a part of our heritage, The sheriff, Matt Dillon, is asking for is insisting that these guys coming in to have a drink at the saloon would, he was expecting them to cause trouble, and it was okay. They were legal gun owners, and of course they had the right to keep and bear arms, but they didn't need them in a peaceful town. With Matt Dillon already, Hollywood was already on the far left. Yeah, I tell you. It's our heritage. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Matson and Senator Irano versus APL. Yes. And I don't know if you saw the story on Candid. Candid did a pretty nice story on that. And the fact that Senator Irano, who gets a lot of her fundraising from Matson line, which is based in Hawaii, had written a scathing letter to Pete Buttigieg. I think that's the name. The way you have to be from Ohio to pronounce that name, and to basically cancel the decision the Trump administration had done regarding APL and continuing to let them have access to Guam and the Marianas. And what's amazing is that I have not seen anything in the local media outside of Candid News about this. And I have not heard about what the governor is going to do to present to the minister or the secretary of transportation outside of the story. Because if we go back to with only one carrier, we know what that's going to mean for the prices of goods that are coming by boat. And so I'm still looking. I've been reading everything online to see if Lou Leon Guerrero administration is going to do a pushback, but apparently not. So I thought maybe she could send Lieutenant Josh Tenorio, and they can have a gay summit in D.C. and tell him how nice we are here on Guam. Well, maybe Senator Mazie Hirono was actually going to the underlying message was really to Buttigieg to even the playing field and give the same amount of money to Matson.
Because
but Matt, sorry, the reason APL has the status it has is because it agreed in case of a war emergency to divert their boats for the Defense Department, which Matson refused to do. So why should they get the same deal and not?
But this is commonly done. Even the air carriers that come through for years and years, Essential Air Service was supported by federal government, so they had guaranteed percentage of the cost of flying the planes was guaranteed because those planes were available for defense assignments. And then there's also postal service contracts for carrying the mail. So much mail would actually come, even if it was even if they were boxes, would still come by air, and also Guam and the Marianas, all the Marianas, and now the main areas of Micronesia are all falling under the contingency plans of the Department of Defense, and so these same carriers are going to be needed to keep goods flowing to the communities out here. It's not that these ships are going to be required to go to other places, but they're required to come here.
You have to be part of the program. You have to be part and sign in with the program. APL is, and Matson is not.
And why would Matson not be? By their own, it's their own business plan, right?
To answer. I guess Matson rather do business and not have the other side of the coin. So I don't know. I was puzzled why our own state government is not pushing back on this story, because we know competition is good for the consumer, but apparently Senator Irano, who is one of Bob Klitzkie preferred senators, then she would probably get harpooned if she was in the studio, you know.
Oh yeah. They wouldn't miss her. No.
Yeah. But it's interesting. So then the other thing I was looking at is, you know, so far I haven't heard much from the legislature here on Guam, and we have our typical tax and spend government at Adelup.
Yes.
But what I've seen in the negotiations right now for the budget at the federal level is that the progressive, I don't know why they are called progressive, because all their policies are regressive. Now they have something new. They do the spend first and then tax later.
Oh yeah, you have to.
They are doing it the other way around. Maybe they figured out that was more easy to pass that way. If you do the spending, then you can justify the taxation. So we'll see. And I don't know. Do you read the foreign press at all?
When I can. I don't. I try to read as much as possible, but
yeah,
I have to. When I start losing sleep, I have a problem. So I just settle with what I can between the Washington Post and the Atlantic magazine.
Oh, okay.
So you should send me some suggestions.
Go ahead.
I said you should send me some suggestions of what I should follow.
Well,
I'd like to hear that.
That was quite surprising to me because of where it was coming from and who wrote it. It was on this past weekend in the Sunday Times of London, which you can get online, and there was a very interesting article by a guy that's known to be more liberal-leaning and a very big anti-Trump journalist from Britain, and his title was, "Well, Trump was right after all," and he was reacting to the result of the inquiry of the Arizona 2020 elections, and he had very strongly worded, and he also savaged Trump, but at the same time he had some very strongly worded formulas to say this is very dangerous for any democracy. And then he made, of course, the parallel with the upcoming election in Great Britain, and he was quite worried that that could happen in his country. But I was very taken aback because I read him from time to time, and he's more like on the line of Senator Irano, rather than rather conservative. And so it was quite interesting. And when I started reading, I said, well, he's got it basically all down to a T, and he's analyzing it. His main concern was the fact that the media, big tech, the unions, and some elected officials had colluded, which he shows by the Time magazine article from last March. Had colluded to kind of basically save democracy, quote unquote, by rigging the election. So it was very interesting because I didn't, this is the kind of thing you expect if you read Breitbart News or something like that, but not something you would see in the Sunday Times of London. So
I'll see if I can find that article and read it. So thank you.
Very surprising. That's right. So anyway, that's all what I had for today, and congratulations on all the nominations and things.
Thank you very much.
And then I see the guy that was talking about useless walkways is Gary Cooper.
Yes, it is an article about that was submitted by Gary Cooper.
Yeah, that is the father of Ken Cooper Gofigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who is the right arm of Professor
Bevacqua.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Gary's a nice guy. He's right actually in this column, but this is kind of the quadrature of the circle.
Well, this is why I say every now and then I'll remind our listeners that it's not right to consider the source too strongly. Listen to what's being said, because you may have you may already judge the source, the speaker, the author of an article, based on something that she said previously. But if you're not looking at the substance of the article, if you're not listening to the substance of the comments, then and thinking about how it's consistent with or not consistent with both the way you already knew the person to be and whether it appears to be factual.
I know Gary pretty well. We are on opposite side of the spectrum, but I respect him. He's always been a very honest person, so I don't have any preconceived idea about that. And he's a pretty nice man.
Well,
German family from Saipan.
Mm-hmm.
I loved him on High Noon.
Gary Cooper. Thank you. We're still talking about cowboys and guns.
Now it's time to sing that famous song about Jose. Jose, can you see?
Yeah, I can see Jose.
All right.
Thank you very much, Frenchie.
Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
Be sure to vote. You can vote, right?
Will.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you again, and we'll talk with you again on Monday. Thank you very much for calling today here on Tall Tales. It's 5:29. Let's take our break a little bit early, and we'll get right back in to more Tall Tales.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
You know all those amazing photos and videos saved on your camera roll capturing your love for Guam? We want to see it. Log on to visitguam.com/Instaguam to submit your best moments for a chance to win weekly prizes. The Guam Visitors Bureau will choose a weekly winner, so share your love for our island paradise now and win. Brought to you by GVB. Thank you for making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
I don't know about you guys, but I really love it when we can get a man on base. And so, yeah, that's what I love hearing. Well, hopefully that was enough of a hit to get the man on base. A few moments ago, we were talking, mentioning Gary Cooper's article, No More Useless Walkways on School Campuses. And, you know, he's taking his perspective from just what's going on at one school, Benevente Middle School up in Dedido. 1,200 plus students, and he says that our long-awaited covered walkways are finally being constructed. At least a section to connect the 8th grade annex to the gym is being worked on. And then he goes through and he talks about previous designs and where they are and whether it's been enough to keep the kids dry, or at least the feet dry, or whatever the deal is. And he says, nowhere on Guam did I ever find covered walkways to be sufficient. Not at the Naval Barracks, when I did work down there, not when I took classes at Guam Community College a lifetime ago, and especially not at BMS. And then he says, I'm sure it's not sure if it's too late, but I would recommend a central corridor connecting every building for students and staff to use in times of inclement weather. Generations of our students will have to deal with this problem. And this is a design problem. And he actually poses the reason for the design problem right here in his article. And that is, if you look at the covered walkways between our buildings on campus here on Guam, they look just like the covered walkways between Navy buildings on base. They're not built to be effective. They are built to be there so that the hottest sun in the middle of the day provides shade, and if the rain is blowing, you're going to get wet. It's not a rain canopy. It's a sun canopy. And in our, I would say laziness, because the Department of Public Works can come up with design standards for Government of Guam construction that will be more appropriate for Guam. And as long as they meet engineering standards and they are functional, then there is room for improvement. And we know this. Benevente Middle School was put into service in 1967. And I know this because I was there on the first day of 7th grade. It was a brand new school. And now they're going to build walkways in between. I'm happy for that because we need them. The walkway covered the walkways. But they're not broad, and they aren't big enough canopies outside the doorways to the cafeteria. They're just like you find between buildings on naval installations and Air Force installations. And I'm sure if we go to the Marine base, we're going to find the same covered walkways. No imagination. Just adopt, easy design, sign off on it, go home, pat yourself on the back. Ah, good job, well done. But those walkways are being constructed at a building that is, 54 years old? You really want to, 55 years old, you really want to build new walkway canopies for generations to come between these buildings? I'm glad, but they may not last 5 years. Buildings are themselves pretty old. Again, our telephone number here is 888-8255. Let me continue with Dami Katni. Relief for power customers could arrive months from now thanks to solar energy. So says the Guam Daily Post in its editorial today on page 28. The Guam Power Authority's efforts to diversify the sources of Guam's electricity from what used to be completely fossil fuel-run generators could finally provide island consumers the relief they so need, starting a few months from now. GPA recently projected that a subsidiary for state-run Korea Electric Power Company, or KEPCO, South Korea's largest entity in the energy space, could start selling solar energy to GPA in early 2022. The KEPCO plant, which is being developed in Manilao, is capable of producing 60 megawatts, or nearly one-fourth of Guam's peak electricity demand. The plant initially was projected to start producing power in December. Now the target date to commission the solar plant has been delayed to March or April of 2022. GPA General Manager John Beneventi told members of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities on Tuesday. The delay was a result of KEPCO being hit, ironically, by environmental regulatory snags when the project's alleged failure to put in place adequate erosion control measures caused mud and stormwater runoff to flow into the freshwater pools at tourist attraction and historical site Marbo Cave. KEPCO and its contractor Samsung E&C America Inc. still have to answer for the erosion issue, including to the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. EPA, and the Guam Office of the Attorney General. But as far as the Department of Public Works is concerned, its order to stop the project from proceeding has been lifted, GPA stated earlier this week. We don't know how DPW went from being somewhat obscure on the enforcement scene to being a hardliner poised to fine the solar plant developer's contractor millions of dollars to now greenlighting the project once again, just like that. DPW issued the stop work order August 21st, derailing the project's financing and the actual work at the site. Beneventi said the stop work order was lifted as of September 27. He added, DPW, as of press time Thursday, has not given the details of how or why its position changed. Focusing on benefit to ratepayers. Today, we can focus on how this project ultimately can be a benefit to power ratepayers. The resumption of the project would help insulate Guam from future spikes in oil prices. At least that's what GPA expects. It's encouraging to know that our electricity will not go completely dark if somehow the fuel supply ships that pull into Guam's port each month don't arrive or are delayed. There were years when GPA spent more than $300 million a year on fuel oil to fire up its power plants. That's a lot of money on fossil fuels and a lot of money down the island's economic drain. KEPCO is spending an estimated $200 million to develop the solar farm, and it plans to recoup the money under a 25-year agreement to sell solar energy to GPA. Even with the delay, there are fuel cost savings anticipated, and the project remains ahead of its contract deadline of May 2022, according to GPA. Beneventi estimated the start of the solar plant energy's production will result in about a $5 million to $6 million reduction in GPA's cost of fuel during the first 4 months the facility is running. Beneventi said on Tuesday, as it gets real and more defined over the next couple months, then I will make the recommendation that we put that into the fuel surcharge equation so that we can adjust the ratepayer's price. We have GPA and senators to thank, in part for their foresight in harnessing energy from the sun. The U.S. Energy Information Administration has acknowledged milestones in Guam's shift from near complete reliance on fossil fuels. Quote, a goal of Guam's economic development strategy is to replace some of its imported petroleum with local renewable energy resources. In 2008, Guam's legislature enacted a renewable energy portfolio standard to have renewable sources provide 8% of the island's electricity sales by the end of 2020. The renewable goal would increase to 10% of electricity sales by 2025 and to 25% by 2035. In 2019, Guam's legislature updated the standard to require that 50% of electricity sales come from renewables by 2035 and 100% by 2045, the EIA stated in a report. There is at least one more thing GPA and the legislature can do. As the cost of solar panels and home solar energy storage becomes affordable, GPA and the legislature should support homeowners who take the initiative to install solar systems in their homes. Rather than remove or diminish incentives for homeowners to go for solar systems, the goalpost for ratepayers should be moved closer, not farther away. The energy security that solar energy provides could be beneficial for the island and its people. I take it back. It's not an infomercial. Unless we're talking about infomercial for companies that will be providing solar generation solutions at the home level. GPA has to build power plants to meet demand, all demand, 100% of demand. And you cannot satisfy that demand 100% of the time with solar, because not enough sun shines on those panels. The wind doesn't blow all the time. What else? Batteries. There are technologies. And those technologies will mature over the next 20, 30 years. And I understand that part. But GPA is responsible for 100% of power generation, to meet 100% of demand of power generation, even if nothing else is available for renewables. So we still have to pay for the plants. We still have to import fuel. There has to be a rolling reserve. They have to keep the turbines turning, even if they don't have a lot of load, because they're using the load from the it's called spinning reserve. They just keep them spinning because there's not a demand for it, or they have rapid fire generation of plants. It's like starting an engine. They start them up and they run them and they synchronize them when a big cloud comes over. Now, I've got a guy on. There are people all over this island who know more about this than me, and here's one of them right now. Hey there, Bob.
Hello. First off, we don't need the spinning reserve the way we used to. I'm going to get into a couple of things here, because there's at least one, there's two, and I know one's a 24 megawatt utility battery for storage that is owned by GPA. By having the battery online, it means that you have, it's like a UPS, only it's for the whole utility. And if a cloud goes over or a sudden demand happens, it immediately absorbs the loss of the solar energy And if it's very short term, it doesn't matter. If it turns out to be a little bit longer term, then you have to start up the ones that you can get started fairly fast that are not in there. So you don't need the spinning reserve the way we used to, because batteries are a much better way and more efficient. You don't have to keep fueling them to run in a spin without load.
How much battery capacity is
24
needed?
megawatt. 24 megawatts is the equivalent of one reasonable sized generator.
Okay, so just as a buffer, then.
Yeah, so when the cloud comes by, and you're correct, but this has really helped us on a lot of things because it's absorbed in the states. The utilities are all interconnected, so they get their reserve from their neighboring power, and it's a much larger system.
Yeah,
so a loss
the
of
grid.
15, 20 megawatts on the grid wouldn't be a blip. Or on an island, you lose that. Your voltage drops, things can trip, the cycles per second can drop if the load's too deep, all sorts of problems. And that's actually prior to solar even. The reason we used to have such number of outages tripping in different areas is because there could be load shifts or so on. But putting in these batteries helps bring us closer to how things operate in the States, because the batteries make up for us not being on the grid, and they also make up for clouds and stuff that are going by on solar. So it's a big investment by the GPA, but it really helps keep. You'll notice we've had far less power outages in the last 5 years than we did 25 years ago.
Yes, yes.
And
We've all
one of the
noticed it.
contributing factors of that.
It's a good thing.
A second thing is you should not give people the chance to sell power to GPA at the same rate they pay back. That's net metering. That's not a good idea. That's like the grocery store buying eggs at the same price they sell them. They wouldn't be in business very long. There's the infrastructure. There's the billing. There's the power plants that are providing the power when the cells are not undone. And you know that big battery I'm talking about? Well, it not only has to absorb the loss of energy from the big solar plants that GPA has, but if you have a bunch of homes that get hit by a cloud, it's got to absorb those also. And the people are expecting, if I'm paying 25 cents a kilowatt hour for my electricity, including fuel charges, I should be able to get 25 cents back. That's not the way it works when you're putting it into the system. You have to only go for what the avoided cost is for making that electricity, not the retail rate of it. And that's not going to be as favorable to the people putting it in. And you can say it's not encouraging people to go solar. If they really want all solar, they can buy their own battery and disconnect from the grid altogether. But if you allow people to get power into the system with net metering, the same price into the system as is paid, what you've turned around and done is you've made every other ratepayer pay for the infrastructure that person's using for the power backup, whether it's spinning reserve or battery, for all the utility and power lines that are in place they're using. And I don't think you want to see a couple of cents increase in your power bill to subsidize those people who get solar energy, because that would not be reasonable either. So we've got to go to a system where your power avoided cost is what they get paid, which is fair and reasonable because that's what GPA is avoiding, not net metering.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very good. And I knew that you would have the answer to those, many of the questions. I wanted to ask you a question, though. Perhaps you have or you can confirm my suspicion on this. And that is, because we have power that now the market has shown, the businesses and homes on Guam and the government of Guam can all afford to pay 25 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. And so
it's a blended rate, because your residential rates start with a low rate for the first bit of power you use. We call that our lifeline rate. Then it goes to a higher rate for the rest you use. Businesses are paying somewhat more on demand. If a business has a high demand some of the time, but not all the time, they actually pay a higher rate for all the power, because they have to, going back to that battery and spinning reserve, if they go from drawing 15 kilowatts to 120 kilowatts and back to 15, the demand has to be there to absorb when they go to that peak, or we would be brownouting the area they're in. So there are demand factors that go into this also.
Right, but on average, if the average amount
well, let's say a
charged,
quarter a kilowatt hour.
Okay.
It may be slightly higher than that with the new fuel surcharges, but it's a good, easy number to work with.
Yeah, but the point I want to make...
And in the ballpark.
Yeah, the point I want to make is that because Guam has comfortably absorbed 25 cents a kilowatt hour on with all of the adjustments, and for fuel or for a ratepayer type, because of that, GPA can confidently go out and sign contracts for new power plant, for solar power, because in the future, the power will not drop below 25 cents an hour, because that's what is a kilowatt hour, because that is what sustains. We already show that we can pay it now, and so going forward, technologies will only go down in cost.
If we want to encourage,
and we'll have more
things
customers.
Like, yeah, but if we want to encourage electric cars and other things, it would be good if we could bring the price down. And just because we can absorb it now doesn't mean that that's a rate we should be, hope for. I mean, it would be nice if we could get back down to below 20 cents. Remember, we were much lower just several months ago, and we got this increase, and that's really hurting a lot of people on the increase. But one of the other things, when people are talking about solar energy, one of the things that I try to do, and by the way, I'm in favor of having alternative energies, even being built on houses, as long as the factors are in there appropriate for the person to get the return on the investment. But if you're going to spend money, the first money that should be spent in the first couple of thousand, which is much less than what putting solar panels is going to be, is to go to very energy efficient appliances, energy efficient washer, dryer, refrigerator, air conditioning. If you get a very high SEER air conditioner, you can drop your electric bill by 10, 20%, and that's far cheaper than making that 10 to 20% of the power by trying to add solar cells to your roof. So people need to be very conscious when they're buying appliances, especially air conditioners, but also refrigerators, washers, and other things, to make sure they get a very energy efficient appliance, because that's the fastest return on the investment for them right away, and it reduces the demand on the whole system.
Yep, this is well, I guess we'll be talking about this all next week, because next week from the 3rd to the 9th or so is Public Power Week. We were reminded of this by John Beneventi in another letter today, so I know we'll be hearing about this, and we'll be talking about this too, right here on Tall Tales.
Okay.
Bob, thank you very much for the call this evening.
I don't think the GPA general manager is going to disagree with me too much on what I'm saying here, although I'm, of course, in no way connected with a power company, but I do understand how they have to make their rates and how to be equitable to all the ratepayers.
Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate your perspective on this afternoon.
Sure. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And that's our own Bob Kelly. If you don't recognize his voice, well, listen for him again here on The Point, whether on Ray's show in the morning or on this show in the afternoon. Right now, let's take a break as we are in our last break for the day.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
We have about another 5 minutes to go here on Tall Tales. I just want to kind of finish up here with our Zami Ikatni. I'm not going to give either of these articles particular kudos. One, for the PDN, and Adelup needs a plan to address chronic flooding areas on Guam. For 2/3 of the article being about Matapang Beach, which is supposed to be used as a recharge zone, not as a place to construct. And for looking at looking towards the benefit to visitors and not to the local residents who use that beach extensively as one way that we can get access to the Tumon Bay. And at the Guam Daily Post, for a headline that says that we're going to have relief thanks to solar energy, 5 to 6 million reduction over the first 4 months in the cost of fuel. We're talking about 300 million a year, and then they go to 5 to 6 million reduction in cost of fuel during the first 4 months, instead of a rate that's close to like $1 million a day, and then we're going to drop to we're going to say that there's a savings of roughly 1/30 of that. And for saying, ironically, that the delay was a result of KEPCO being hit, ironically, by environmental regulatory snags when the project's alleged failure to put in place adequate erosion control measures. What? There are standards for putting in erosion control, especially in a project as large as that. And they should have known it. They should have known it. That's a large area and a slope. And there's nothing ironic about it. And they were hit by environmental regulatory snags. No, these are environmental regulations that maintain standards in the community so businesses cannot avoid liability for off-site damage they cause. They saved money by not putting in the proper controls for the runoff. And we're going to hear more about this in the days to come. Maybe the agreements that allowed all of this to be, for the work to resume, is because they've gone out and they've done the right thing and they've put all the right silt curtains up, and like they should have the first time. And so that mitigation, those measures that they should have done the first time are in place. And so, yeah, they can resume their work, but it doesn't mean that they're going to avoid liability for what damage they've done. It's already 6 o'clock. I just wanted to sing Kumbaya. A good way as any to begin restoring broken relationships. Maybe on Monday we'll bring this article back by Father Fran. It's just about 6 o'clock. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, wishing you a very good weekend. We'll be back on Monday at 4 with more Tall Tales. Have a good weekend, everyone.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
No infrastructure vote. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Unable to get enough votes to ensure its passage, House Speaker Pelosi late last night delayed the vote on the $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan.
A coalition of House liberals has blocked the House from voting. About 10 or more House Republicans would back the package, but that's not enough to make up the vote deficit on the Democratic side of the aisle. Progressives want details nailed down on the Democrats' $3.5 trillion social spending package before they back the infrastructure bill.
Fox's Chad Pergram at the Capitol. Leaving the House floor just after midnight, the Speaker vowed there will be an infrastructure vote today. The $3.5 trillion social spending bill is still stuck in the Senate. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin says he can't support more than $1.5 trillion, saying the larger bill could harm the economy and create what he called an entitlement mentality. Midnight passed in Washington without the government starting to close down.
President Biden signing legislation to avert a partial government shutdown. Only hours ahead of a midnight deadline, Congress passed the bill to fund the government through December 3rd. Democrats and Republicans are still at odds about how to raise the government's borrowing cap.
Fox's Matt Finn. A federal appeals court in Washington says the Biden administration can continue to use the Trump-era public health provision known as Title 42 to quickly expel illegal immigrants who might be a threat to spread the coronavirus. Another federal judge had ordered the practice stopped by the end of September. All summer long, a small town in central Iowa has been searching for a missing 10-year-old boy. That effort may have come to its end. A farmer finding in a cornfield what the medical examiner confirms are human remains. They've not yet identified them as Xavier Harrelson, but say the clothes match what the boy was wearing when he was last seen on May 27th. Spokesman for the state's Department of Criminal Investigation says it may take weeks to identify the remains. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. New from the Fox News Podcasts Network, Dana Perino, co-host of the 5 and America's Newsroom on Fox News Channel, returns to the world of audio with a new limited-time podcast, Everything Will Be Okay with Dana Perino. Building off the success of her best-selling book of the same name, Dana provides an unequaled brand of advice built on real-life experience and interviews experts and individuals that make a difference in the lives of others. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
A school shooting Thursday at a Memphis middle school involving 2 teenagers.
The victim attends the Cummings School in Memphis. Because he is 13 years old, his name is being withheld. According to Memphis police, the shooter is also a student at the school. He fled after the shots were fired, but later surrendered at a police precinct. The other students at the